What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you've been around the channel for a while, you guys know about my 2006 Monte Carlo SS with an LS4 in it, and we've also built it. We've built the LS4 top end, heads, cam, you know, rockers, valve train, all that stuff, right? So there is an inline issue this thing's having right now. Let me just say it outright, it's consuming oil. What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you've been around the channel for a while, you guys know about my 2006 Monte Carlo SS with an LS4 in it, and we've also built it. We've built the LS4 top end. We did heads, cam, you know, rockers, valve train, all that stuff, right? We didn't touch the bottom end. We also built the transmission. If you guys have been on the channel for a while, I think I've explained it a few times. Click up here if you guys actually want to see the video I made about it. I went into a little more depth than I will today about what we did to it. But a short recap, we yanked the whole cradle out, which is through the bottom. So it's the engine transmission together because this is also a front wheel drive car. So we yanked out the whole cradle. We pulled the motor and transmission separately off of each other, did the motor, had the trans sent out to a guy in Indiana who actually specializes in rebuilding these front wheel drive, I forget the actual name of the transmission, like an MT something, yada yada yada. They're poop. Even in the 6-cylinder ones, the 6-cylinder Monte Carlos, you know, Buicks, the Pontiac like Grand Prix, the Bonnevilles, they all use the same poopy front wheel drive transmission and they all go out, even on the regular 6-cylinder models and especially the supercharged 6-cylinder models, and then even more so on the LS4 models because they're just not made well. They're not made to handle torque very well. The input shafts on them are very weak. That was also a problem with mine. We went in, we did the heads, a cam, valve train stuff, and the transmission was rebuilt. So I was like, okay, this thing should be pretty good. Now I didn't bother to tear into the engine bottom end because I'm like, that's an LS, they're usually pretty stout. And nothing was done to this car at all before we touched it. Actually, nothing was done to this car at all, one bit. So I figured it's probably just fine. Now, hindsight being 45/25, or I think it's 20/20. I don't know. Probably should have done it because we had the engine out. It was on an engine stand. We could have easily flipped it over, pulled the oil pan off of it. We did pull the oil pan off to like just ensure about anything, but could have pulled the main caps off, pulled the rod caps off, pulled the pistons out the bottom, and just put new rings on them, inspected the cylinder walls for any wear because it does have 142,000 miles on this engine. But yet again, it was never really beat on to my knowledge. It's a very clean car. They usually rot it out and everything, so I figured it's probably just fine. If you guys don't know, this was a DOD car, displacement on demand. Pretty much it deactivates 4 of the 8 cylinders. That's not 8, but you get the point. It deactivates 4 of the 8 cylinders for fuel economy reasons. So it pretty much shuts off the intake and exhaust valves by collapsing the hydraulic lifters for those cylinders, right? So you got 2 valves per cylinder, at least in this LS. So what it would do is it would have a hydraulically controlled actuator in it that would, not actuator, but like the actual lifter can be collapsed when it's oil is applied to it through an oil port. It will collapse, and instead of pushing the push rod up and down, it kind of just like, it just squeezes itself. So the push rod actually doesn't move, therefore the rocker arm doesn't move and the valve doesn't move, right? And it's pretty much just dry pumping. That can hurt the transmission as well, especially the shift from 8 to 4 cylinder mode, because you would feel that if you're just driving down the road. You would feel like a boom, you feel like a clunk driving down the road because you're dropping pretty much half your engine's power, right? So what they did, same thing on the trucks too, GM, great idea. They built a certain slippage percentage into the torque converter in the computer so that the driver doesn't necessarily feel it nearly as much. Now that's good for you know, the customer. They don't feel like this weird clunk going on. That's terrible for the torque converter because it's constantly slipping, and especially if you're cruising a lot, you on and off the throttle a little bit, slip, 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 and then the whole thing sends metal through the transmission. It's gonna send all those little particulates through the transmission, and then yeah, pretty much it gets into your clutch back materials, and then you're done. So all those issues was what this thing had. We rebuilt the transmission and yada yada, so it was all good to go, right? And also when we did the engine, we did the DOD delete kit, and when you pull like the upper kind of like lifter valley tray off where the China walls run, kind of, it's different than like a small block, but when you pull that off, you'll see little oil ports not only did we disable it in HP tuners way back then, and I also saw it recently on a recent video I made when I deleted when I disabled the evap system because it was at a small leak detection, and it was, I'm not getting into that mess. Not only did we disable the DOD, which is what a big issue with all these cars is, even the LSs and the trucks or the LQs, whatever we want to call it, same engine pretty much. We disabled that. When it got sent off to the transmission guy, he had to reflash the computer for it to be like, oh, this is because it's a different gear ratio and transmission and everything else. But it couldn't do it anyway. Even if we left the oil ports open, they sell a kit, you plug the oil ports up on top of that valley, so it could never happen, because like I said, it activates by sending oil pressure through this little port that goes into the side of the lifter, causing it to, well, collapse mainly. If there's no oil port, it doesn't matter if the computer is telling it to do it or not. It's a mechanical part. If there's no oil pressure going towards that like they intended to, it cannot collapse. The engine might be telling it to, or the computer might be telling it to, but it cannot do it. Let's hop in the car for the next one. The check engine light went away. It comes and goes as it pleases, guys. If you also, the same video I just recommend you guys go watch, the video I did with HP tuners in the Monte Carlo here, I did the crankshaft variation relearn procedure. So pretty much since we put a cam in it, the cam and crank were slightly out of line, the computer was freaking out, didn't know what to do. And we did this procedure to help out with that a little bit. And yes, it helps, but if you're sitting there idling and you're not doing anything, it will trip the check engine light still. But not with the AC on. If you're idling with the AC on, it doesn't trip the check engine light. I think it has to be because the slightly elevated RPM, it has to be that. But back to the issue we were having with this car. So I did all that work to it, well, in 2019 that I just listed off to you guys. Now I don't drive the car much, right? And when I do drive it, I beat the snot out of it. So you also have to take that into consideration, but it should fully be able to handle that, because it's not making enough power to necessarily hurt itself, right? It's not like it's making gobs of power. But you take into consideration that the only time I do drive it, I beat on it. That also will have a little bit of an effect on how much oil is consumed, right? Now, like I did tell you guys, we did not go through the bottom end. I did not even glance at, take a peek at, nothing, nada. The condition of the piston rings, both of them, or the oil rings, the cylinder walls, except for the ones that were at the bottom of their stroke when we took it out, because I figured it'd be a-okay. I'm sure the cylinder walls are fine. I'm sure the pistons are fine. I'm sure the piston rings seal very okay-ish. But there might be an oil ring starting to go. You know, one of the oil rings on one of the cylinders might be, you know, leaving the chat, because it does have 142,496 miles on it to this moment right now. So 150,000 miles, an LS should be okay, but you're definitely going to start seeing signs of, you know, wear. This car, I thought it was necessary. This car has been a part of this channel since day one. This car is the reason I started this channel and everything. In fact, the first video I ever made on this channel, click up here if you guys want to go see that. The first video I ever made on this channel, this car was freshly rebuilt, probably as of before that video was made, maybe 2 months. Fresh rebuilt. This thing's been built for 5 years now. Wow, I know, nuts, right? For 5 years, it's held up pretty well. Transmission's held up flawlessly, so that's good. If anything else happens, honestly, if I ever do anything to it, I'm gonna end up doing more mods to it. Probably a bigger cam. You know, if I have to pull it out to put new piston rings in it and oil rings in it anyway, I'm gonna put a bigger cam in it. You know, that's just the nature of the beast. It's already out. I'm gonna do more stuff to it, but it's all up in the air what we're gonna be doing here. but just know that it's probably not going to be in this configuration for much too longer. Now, thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't, like and subscribe for more content coming over the channel. Check out the other videos with the Monte Carlo here. They're pretty interesting. I think you guys would like them. Anyways, I'll see all you guys in the next one.